First went to Cuba about 5 years ago. My predecessor at McKinney Church told me that he'd heard about the ministry that was happening in Cuba through WorldLink, and his statement was to me, if half of what they say is happening over there is actually happening, there's an extraordinary move of God and a window of time that we really want to get involved in. And so I wanted to go see it for myself, and so about 5 years ago got to go down and teach a group of pastors. And what I found was that it's well more than 50% of what is being told is actually happening in Cuba, and just a really extraordinary privilege to be a part of such a great move of God.
Our mission at WorldLink Ministries is to train and deploy local leaders in their context so that they can do two basic things: saturate their regions with the gospel and plant churches. We started in Cuba in the year 2000 after 3 years of a ministry friend who worked with us telling us, if you go to Cuba, what you do in Spain, which is a difficult country, is likely to explode.
One of the most impactful moments for me the time I was there was one of the first evenings we were there. Manny told me we were going to go preach at one of the biggest churches in Cuba as a part of this movement. And being from Texas, I had a picture of what a big church might look like, and even dialed that down some, knowing I was in Cuba and knowing something about the spiritual climate there. But I wasn't ready for what I saw. When we pulled into a neighborhood and walked down the steps into what was a one-car garage that was filled with people sitting in every single seat, all the way up the stairs, leaning over the steps in to be a part of this worship service. And just listening to them worship and watching that pastor preach with passion and with clarity about the gospel. And then finding out that even though I was impressed with how many people were present for that one service, that one service was one of 7 services that church hosted every single week.
We went into Cuba wanting to gather a group of pastors, telling them that we wanted to train local leaders to go do evangelism and go do church planting. And what resulted was that we ended up with 600 church plants right off the bat. When we saw that, we realized that they had a gumption and a desire to do far greater than what we were expecting. So then we began to plan for blocks of church plants throughout the country. We wanted to go into every one of the 15 provinces, north, south, central, and to begin to multiply this. We knew that for every one that we hired, we were likely going to end up with a minimum of 3 churches. But then what we began to discover is that we had an average of 12 at first church plants from the one guy, from one person. In some cases it went as high as 80 church plants. We had an older gentleman who was 65 at the time plant through his team 60 church plants. And then we went from there to the western part of the island where we saw one group plant 200 churches. So we began to count on the fact that we could saturate entire provinces and regions with the gospel by hiring a particular number of groups or of men or women, because they were going to be able to multiply much faster than we were anticipating in the beginning.
We were invited to go to Cuba a couple of years ago to join WorldLink in their church planting efforts, and because of our attention to training leaders around the world, Cuba became really attractive for us at Pantego Bible Church, not only because of the hundreds of leaders that we could impact through WorldLink, but also the proximity location where we could very easily get our people into the island, do ministry, and come back within a week's time. One of the memories that I have of my first trip to Cuba was preaching in a little church just several hours outside of Havana. And this church literally was located in the living room and the front porch of a little house. You could really call it a house church. And as I began to preach to a group of maybe 30 or 40 people, more and more people from the community just kept kind of coming up to the porch, looking in from the windows. And by the time I was done preaching that evening, there were more people standing on the front porch of this house than there were inside. And the amazing thing about it for me is the eagerness of people to hear the Word of God preached in a real way. And it just reminded me of the incredible need and the possibility of a church planting movement throughout Cuba. I think the thing that impacted me the most was seeing how rapidly the church was growing in Cuba. To sit with a pastor and to know that he had been planning a church for just a couple of years, and in that short time had already launched several daughter churches, was just extraordinary to me. I know that there's not only the expectation, but even more so, there's the desire for these pastors to not just settle with one church, but to mobilize and multiply their churches into a variety of churches around the region.
It seems like the climate is rich for a limited window of time for us to invest. That's why I'm really excited about not only as a church our opportunity to invest in WorldLink and the movement that's happening in Cuba, but also as an individual for my family to be a part of what God's doing through WorldLink all over the country of Cuba.
Guys over there are not working for me. They don't ask for permission if they want to plant more churches. They're not waiting on me to come and tell them how to go to the next level, or, hey guys, we need to go to... They go as soon as they see readiness. They go in every direction. They have a vision to reach their own country. Where did that come from? It is Jesus at work in their hearts. Jesus at work in their minds to give them the perception to be able to know when to go and how ready their people are, and to go as fast and as quickly as they can. And I realized it's not, I am here as one more link to connect people who are wanting to do things in the U.S. with people who are doing things for their Lord in other places. But the joy of it to me is, Jesus said, I will build my church, and He's doing it. And it is a great joy to be part of His team.